It has been a long wait indeed, but SFO Grimhammer has finally, fully released in all its glory, and in celebration, we will return to where it all began. Began with Spinosaurus, hunting down Dark Elf trespassers in the jungles of Lustria. Rakarth the Beastlord has traveled across an ocean of fear to tame these creatures, so a monster mash for the ages is brewing. For those of you unfamiliar, SFO Grimhammer is a total overhaul mod for Warhammer 3 battles and campaign, changing unit balance, mechanics, technology, and economy for every race in the trilogy. While they're carrying much of their work over from Game 2, they focused on removing some of the bloat from previous titles, and in this battle, the Sentinels of Zeti in the purple, teaming up with a pair of Troglodons to kick the Druchii off their lawns, led by the Pale Death and its primeval roar. Front line of red-crested skinks with shields will support their acid-spitting magnificence, while Saurus and Coldwind Riders make up the second and third lines. Double Troglodon has a lot of ranged firepower in SFO. They hit like a truck with their missile damage, and for the HQ, Slann Mage Priest of the Lore of Life, alongside Old One's Power Fist Sacred Croxagors, providing healing and damage in equal measure. Remember, Slann are legit terrifying in this mod. They can calm Rampage map-wide, explode units with missiles from their mines, and grant 100% resistance against incoming ranged fire with their bubbles of protection. Not a lord that can easily be overlooked despite being a fat, goofy-looking toad on a toilet seat. The other interesting unit for the Lizardmen here, hiding in the trees for now with a few chameleon stalkers in the vanguard, are Teecheeweechee's Raiders, which are essentially a unique regiment of renown for the Lizardmen. They are a fantastic cavalry unit, all kinds of additional utility and combat buffs, immune to psych, vanguard, and a fat 25% ward save on top of 90 speed. So they are hyper mobile as well. They can do it all and will, given half a chance. Really cool unit. We've seen them in Warhammer 2. We've seen them in action in Warhammer 3 for the first time, and I'm excited for that. On the other side of Kulchen Plains comes the Terror in the Night, the Thousand Maws. Beastlord Rakarth on his Black Dragon Bracchus does all the same things he does in the base game. Destroys dinos, rips up raptors, karate chops Croxagors, and doesn't afraid of anything. It's fully kitted out in this one. It'll be helped out by a Sorceress with Enfeebling Foe and Pit of Shades, and yet another monster masher, the Dread Charybdis, with its Abyssal Howl and Toxic Venom. Remember that Rakarth can strip away terror and tame big monsters, which synergizes real well with a creature that causes so many leadership problems innately. That thing can take on pretty much any dinosaur and come out on top in a 1v1 fight, so be very afraid. They'll be backed up by a Death Hag on foot with a Chill Blade for reducing enemy melee effectiveness, a horde of Bleak Swords and Dark Shards, the Blades of the Blood Queen in the rear, and Cold One Knights, which are a bit more elite in SFO compared to vanilla, as they should be. They're riding heavily armored Utah Raptors, and if there's one disconnect between lore and Total War Warhammer 2, I'd say that Cold One Knights are pretty near the top of my list there. If you've ever read about them in Malice Darkblade, they are the elite of the elite. In Warhammer 2, they're just kind of like, man, kind of crappy stats. They do well against Armored Cav, but that's pretty much all they do well against. It's very strange design for them. Kind of like White Lions, I guess. They just felt they needed to fill out a certain cost archetype in the roster, and it made them worse than they traditionally should have been. Things are going to get kicked off with a bang here, quite literally. I mean, Chameleon Stalkers firing a bunch of explosive blowpipes into the Dark Riders who were doing some scouting. Over on the other side, Rakarth the Beastlord diving into the infantry and getting right in the face of these Troglodons, and in a 1v1, he would absolutely destroy them. But they can fire in from multiple sides. That's one of the benefits of having the double Troglodon type of play, is you have those overarching fields of fire, so if one gets tied down, you still got the other firing in, and this will force Rakarth off. He is isolated here, and he is going to take a lot of damage from point-blank Chameleon Stalker volleys and from those Troglodons as he attempts to escape. Real interesting combat brewing over on this side, though. Those Dark Riders have 100 speed in SFO, so Lycav that is exceptionally mobile, real quick on their feet, but Teecheeweechee's Raiders have 90 speed, and they also have additional acceleration when they get close. So they were actually able to almost catch up to them, but now it's kind of cat and mouse here. Both sides are kind of poking and prodding, seeing what they can get away with, and Teecheeweechee's Raiders that close to the enemy army, tied down with the Dark Riders, need to escape. And in the span of about 15-20 seconds, both Lizardmen and the Dark Elves will play the role of Predator and the role of Prey. Neither side is going to come out of it with many casualties at all. Good use of screening units and micro making use of their full maneuverability, and those mounted step archer feints and traps the Mongols conquer the world with really come into play here. Pretty interesting tactics on both sides, and it'll set up for a breath attack that will not be particularly good and kill a few Dread Spears and a few Chameleon Stalkers, but probably not worth the use of a breath attack there, though it will actually cause a bit of a leadership penalty, and Dark Riders might be able to run those Stalkers down. But with all that additional heavy cavalry support on the Children of the Old Ones side, they should probably be okay. Double Troglodons opening up into the Bleak Swords now and completely eviscerating that unit. A couple volleys and the entire formation is ripped apart. In the source material, Troglodons are essentially a blend of Spinosaur and Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park, and they're blind. They don't even have eyes, which makes their accuracy from range all the more terrifying. But fun little side note, real Dilophosaurs did not have neck frills and they did not spit venom. They also got huge, way bigger than the little guy that ripped up Dennis Nedry in the movie. But yeah, those Troglodons are seriously messing up the front line at the moment, and now they will turn their attention to the Charybdis, which is stomping forward and looking to zone them out. Downside of the Dark Elf formation at the moment is that all their cavalry is positioned over on their right flank. They have nothing in the center to come zone out these Troglodons. Charybdis simply isn't going to be able to do this job very well. It will have to retreat after a couple of shots, but it has a huge HP pool, so even though it does not have regen like its cousin, the Hydra, it'll still be able to take a lot of those shots and reposition itself in a better location. Chameleon Stalkers are going to be the sacrificial lamb right up the center to tie down the enemy formation, perhaps cause some blobbing. Remember that the Slann Mage Priest has 3 things that can punish blobs of infantry: banishments, Bolt of the Old Ones, and Dwellers Below. So any use of those spells in combination could be quite potent, and Lizardmen are going to use this opportunity to attack. So far, it's been a real good start for the Children of the Old Ones, but now that the Dark Shards are into range, this is where their armor piercing and focus fire can be quite devastating, especially if those Croxagors or any of the dinosaurs get into range. Blades of the Blood Queen also going to be extremely good at cutting through Red Crested Skinks and the Saurus, so Lizardmen will have to think of ways to deal with that, and it'll mostly revolve around magic, I would imagine. Red Crested Skinks into the center now. I don't know actually who wins in a fight straight up between them and Bleak Swords. Bleak Swords are a bit more elite in SFO compared to Vanilla as well, and one thing that will turn a lot of infantry engagements in your favor is that Abyssal Howl, that -8 leadership penalty from the Charybdis, and a well-positioned Pit of Shades, which will open up a portal to the void and suck some souls into the next dimension. Definitely a micro mistake to have the Red Crested Skinks and Saurus overlap each other like that. Makes it an irresistible target for magic, of course, and they'll be basically deleted from the game outright. But in response, Slann Mage Priest will cook something else special. Unleash the Dwellers Below. Angry tendrils rising from deep beneath the earth. Huorns and Ents from Middle Earth, breaking the fourth wall and entering a new universe, and the Dark Shards are super sad. After that one, they are quite literally taken from full health down to 0 in a single cast, and the entire regiment will just be outright obliterated. Taking a dirt nap. Good stuff from the Slann Mage Priest for sure. So far, very little pressure's been put on that Troglodon pair. Tichiwichi's Raiders dealing with the Dark Riders out on the flank, and they'll be pushing into the forest to try to deal with the mobility on the Dark Elf side. Tichiwichi's Raiders are going to be a huge issue for the Druki as we move into the middle and late stages of this game if they are able to stay online. Again, they have so much utility. They have debuffs for enemy lords and heroes. They have a ton of maneuverability and speed, and they hit like a truck against armored units, especially cavalry units, because they have innate bonus for Slarge and AP. So, dealing with the Dark Riders for them, not challenging at all, but there are Cold One Knights with Murderous Prowess active nearby, so if they're able to get in, it could cause some issues for sure. Troglodons are pretty much out of ammunition now. The Pale Death diving into the rear, but Bracchus and Rakarth are shadowing him, so well played there to keep your ranged troops alive. I do believe that Dark Shards and most crossbow units fire in more of a flat trajectory, more like handguns in SFO. Faster projectile speed, which makes them more effective against those armored monsters that have a lot of speed and could typically be able to dodge some of your shots. But as all that's going on, Slann Mage Priest bringing out the deluge of spell casting, and a Bolt of the Old Ones will rip out the heart of one of those remaining Dark Shard units. duel between Bracchus and the Pale Death continues. Bubble of Nope going down on the Lizardmen left flank to help them deal with the Cold One Knights, and a Banishment and Blood Statuette of Spite hitting the Harganeth Executioners. Here's another look at that bolt of the Old One. That was so sick. By the way, that flickering, super obnoxious. It's on like half the spellcast in the game. Would really like for Creative Assembly to fix that one, because that is visually quite ugly. It is apparent across a multitude of maps and spellcasts, and I reported it all the way back last February in early access, so yeah. One day. Ancient Mind from the Slann Mage Priest says that it activates map Y, which it does, but that it also provides Unbreakable. Not seeing that here. I just saw Red Crescent Kings round off after Ancient Mind had activated, so not sure if that's a bug or if it's just not supposed to give Unbreakable. Don't really know. What I do know is that Bracchus just soporific breathed his own Harganeth Executioners. Blades of the Blood Queen just got kind of pooped on by that one, and the breath attacks from the Black Dragon in this game have not been great, but Rakarth, despite having a bit of a rough start in terms of taking all that HP damage in the beginning stages from the two Troglodons, he's made a big impact here, and in the center of everything, this is exactly where you want him, because he'll remove Terror, and then the Charybdis stomps over, hits up with that Abyssal Howl, and that's a big LD bomb and a lot of routing on the Lizardmen side. But Tichi-Wichi's Raiders are free on the flank, and as those battle lines break down, this is where a 90-speed armor-piercing cav unit can really come into play, and those Horde ones will rip and tear until it is done. Another Pit of Shades from the Sorceress, this time Source deleted outright, and there's been some good spell casts from her. Pit of Shades, of course, we've been seeing it since the launch of Warhammer 3. Incredible spell. So taking that armor-piercing range fire off the field, extremely important for the Children of the Old Ones here, as is terror routing some of this infantry in the center. The Pale Death is doing what it can, but of course does not have the melee capabilities, even with its Primeval Roar, on the level of something like Rakarth and his Black Dragon Bracchus, which is why the Dark Elves are taking a commanding lead in the center. There are full HP Cold Ones that were held in reserve, now leading a countercharge alongside the Red Crescent Kingston. That is an epic cinematic shot, but can they do enough to take down the Black Dragon and Charybdis combo here, especially with the Chill Blade from that Death Hag in the center of everything? There's a regrowth being sent the way of the Troglodon, so some healing coming out from the Slann. Don't see the Croxagors. I think they were routed off by the Black Dragon. Tichi-Wichi's Raiders continuing to harass the flanks and deal with some of those routing troops, but Dark Riders are going to get a hammer and anvil off. And also remember that healing in SFO, you can't just mindlessly throw it into a melee grinder. Well, you can, but you will be punished a little bit for it. There's a minus 25% weapon damage and melee attack debuff and a lot of stuff that will occur. Yeah, you can see it right there, that they lose a lot of their melee stats while that heal is active. So while healing is obviously still insanely powerful in SFO Grimhammer, you do have to think about when to apply it, because it will make it harder for you to win your melee fights. The Dark Elves have the Lizardmen on the run here. Pale Death and Tichi-Wichi's Raiders, the Horned One Raptor Cav, are working in tandem, but they're going to have to slam into where the Slann Mage Priest is, because the Lord for the Lizardmen is in dire straits right now with a plus 40 bonus versus large Beastlord atop him. And though that barrier will provide some protection and a Bubble of Nope ward save will certainly help out a lot, this first generation Toad needs help with the Charybdis coming in next to the Black Dragon. Pale Death slamming in, Tichi-Wichi's Raiders slamming in, everything going in for a big time monster mash under the blue aura of that Slann Mage Priest. 25% ward save, real useful in this kind of situation. That becalming cogitation from Ancient Mind, granting quote-unquote unbreakable, but at least providing or stopping rampage on the Pale Death Troglodon. But a lot of the cav is routing. Tichi-Wichi's Raiders are being hit hard by that Toxic Venom and the bonus for large and armor piercing from the Charybdis. Rakarth is retreating to get away from the Raptor Cav, but doesn't have a lot in the way of infantry to provide some cushion. Both armies are in tatters here. Slight bounce bar in favor of the Lizardmen. And for the third breath attack, that one was pretty solid. Dealt some good damage to the Pale Death, which is a single entity that they really need to kill, but a regrowth upgraded sent its way might be able to get him back in the fight as he retreats and waits for the damage debuff to disappear. Yet another Pit of Shades from the Sorceress. Yet another unit of Source deleted from the battlefield. And in terms of a monster mash, I would say this would probably go in the favor of the Dark Elves here. But there's more cav coming in. Tichiwichi's Raiders coming in with that -10 melee defense debuff and a postal round-off on Rakarth. Blood Statuette of Spite providing a teeny bit of single entity damage, usually much better against cavalry or full infantry formations. There were some Raptor Cav that were forgotten about. They've just gotten under control and just in time for the battle to end. Again, army losses kind of kicked in a little bit soon there, I think. I'm not sure that should have activated, but I guess once the Black Dragon routed, then the Charybdis had nothing tethering him to the battlefield in terms of morale and leadership. The healing for the Lizardmen in the late game there was extremely potent and a big reason why they were able to take a commanding lead against those monsters. Troglodons did great. 2,300 value for one, 1,400 for the other. We saw them tear up infantry and monsters in equal measure with their spits and poison and melee prowess. Tichiwichi's Raiders might have been MVP on the Lizardman side. For the Dark Elves, Charybdis did fantastic. 2,500 value, him and Rakarth. Even though Rakarth did have kind of an iffy start, he made big waves in the middle and latter portions of that battle. I really like that combination. I think that's kind of genius. You basically strip away terror, which makes enemy monsters susceptible to terror. Then you hit them with the Abyssal Howl, and they will rout off. And we saw multiple times the Dark Elves cause a big chain rout on the Children of the Old One's side, but they managed to rally around their Salon Mage Priest and take it back to the Dark Elves when it mattered most. Really enjoyable game. Hope you guys had fun with it.